Many researchers have found that fear of crime should be defined as the emotional response to potential victimisation. Previous research found that feelings of vulnerability, as measured by fear of crime, are linked with risk situation. For example, safe spot versus hotspot, nighttime versus daytime. They recalled that other factors included the number of people present and if there was antisocial behaviour involved. The purpose of our study was to test whether our fear of crime can be influenced by our environment. We presented participants with daytime and nighttime images of alleyways, some of which had signs of graffiti, and asked them to complete a scale providing a fear of environment score between 1 and 10, 1 being very safe and 10 being very unsafe. We found that participants reported different fear of environment scores when presented with different environmental conditions, and therefore our fear of crime perceptions can be affected by our environment. Hypothesis. We predict that people will report to feel less secure in dark areas and also areas that have been vandalised, for example with graffiti.
Perception studies tell us that if people were to be mixed into specific urban hoods, they will feel safer than if they were placed in other areas. These studies have given us an insight into what environments people perceive to be safe. When we talk about safety in certain environments, there are two types of crime: the real crime and people's perception of crime due to the environment they are in. From these studies, perception models have been created and they have been able to predict 30% of crime in London. The broken windows theory is the concept that every crime that goes neglected in certain environments affects people's attitudes towards this environment and can ultimately lead to an increase in that crime. The broken windows theory believes that if the first broken window in a building is not fixed, then most people will assume that no one cares about the building, causing more windows to be broken. This happens due to people thinking there is no consequences to doing this. This ultimately raises the crime rates. This causes most people to fear this area, making them feel very unsafe. The bystander effect is a phenomenon in which individuals are less likely to help a victim when other people are present. The more bystanders around, the less likely there will be any form of help given. In these situations, people will assume someone else will do something about the problem. This is known as diffusion of responsibility.
Upon looking at the results of the experiment, we could see that the condition with the highest mean is a graffitied alleyway at night time, which means that more people felt unsafe in this environment, whereas the graffitied alleyway during the day had the lowest mean, meaning that people found this environment safe and secure. After finding the standard deviation of each of the environments, we found that the alleyway with the lowest standard deviation is a graffitied alleyway during the day, which means that this answer was the most consistent throughout all the participants. After putting all of the evidence into a graph, it became clear that on average, people felt least secure in the graffitied alleyway at night time. The second least secure answer surprisingly being in the alleyway with no graffiti during the day. On average, people felt most safe in the graffitied alleyway during the day. The second most secure environment was the alleyway with no graffiti at night.
Perception of fear influenced by environmental factors. For this experiment, 40 randomly selected participants were chosen to take part in our investigation. During selection, the age range and gender are not taken into consideration and is not used for our data. Each participant is given a handout questionnaire, which presents images of 4 different environment conditions, 2 of these being an alley with graffiti, one in daylight and the other at night, and the other 2 being an alley with no graffiti, one in daylight and the other at night. The main question that is asked for each image is to imagine themselves walking through each alley and how they would feel. A rating is given for each condition from a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very safe and 10 being very unsafe, to determine the level of fear indicated from each participant. After collecting data, each participant is given an information sheet regarding this experiment and a consent form to ensure this investigation is ethical. The independent variable of this experiment is the graffiti and the lighting, whether it's in daylight or night. And the dependent variable is the average fear of environment score, obtained from all the data collected.
The experiment was set out to discover how people perceive different areas at different times of day. The idea of the experiment was to see how areas with or without graffiti and different levels of lighting could affect people's rate of fear. The experiment found the majority of participants found that an area with high levels of graffiti and poor levels of lighting at night would be the area they would least likely to visit, due to their perception that this area would have the highest level of crime. This relates to the different psychological theories, such as broken windows theory. An example of broken windows theory would be that if the first window in a building is broken and not repaired, then people who like breaking windows will assume that no one cares about the building and more windows will be broken. Soon, the building will have no windows, this showing in areas that have graffiti, as once graffiti marks on a wall isn't removed, people assume that no one cares and adds their own graffiti to the wall or area. If we were